Octavia Spencer, the movie Hidden Figures, just opened to a very strong box office across the country. It's also been applauded by critics, and it's got a A+ cinema score rating from audiences, so you know that people like the movie, if not love it. Why do you think this movie has hit such a chord with people?
We all, well, a few reasons. It's about women who, ordinary women who had extraordinary talents, and they were largely unrecognized. So you have that aspect, and then you have the underdog aspect. We all have been underdogs at some point in our lives, and if you don't root for the underdog, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm. Well, and also I think one of the brilliant things about the movie is that it takes something that is a very specific look at, being an African American woman in America and makes it universal. Everybody
Hmm.
can relate to these characters.
Oh, that little jingle is that something? Okay, can you tell him? I don't know what that means. I'm like, I heard a little music. Um,
Okay.
we won't fiddle with it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that assessment. I do. Again, it's about for me underdogs and just tapping into what that was like for them.
So tell us a little bit about who Dorothy Vaughan was, the character that you play in this movie.
Well, Dorothy Vaughan was an acting supervisor of the African American Computing Group. She didn't have the title or the pay, but she did a lot of the work. And she was a strong advocate for the women who worked in her pool. She was also a visionary. They were having a hard time getting the IBM to work, and she figured it out, and then realized that by figuring it out, she had now rendered that work pool obsolete. And so she taught herself how to program the IBM, and then taught the women in her under her charge how to program it as well. She was so many things, but she was definitely an advocate for the people who worked with her.
Right, and provided NASA with what they needed to launch their first successful space missions. Um,
Absolutely.
One of the things that struck me watching the film was that, having watched numerous movies about astronauts and the early days of NASA, was that I didn't know this story. And
Mhm.
that's the refrain that I've heard from a lot of people. Were you aware of the real story before you got the part?
No, no, I wasn't. When I met with Donna Gelati, I actually thought it was historical fiction. It wasn't that far-fetched because I had just done The Help, and it was historical fiction. And because I hadn't heard or seen anything about these women through all of the iterations that we've seen about the space race, whether it's in film or books or archival footage, they've never been made mention of, not any of the African American women or the white women that were computers, because at that time the computers were women, both black and white. And it was a story that I had no idea about.
So, did you do any kind of research into the part and into the story? What kind of research did you do going into it?
Well, you do, the internet now is the biggest tool. But what you find when people are unheralded, that there's very limited information about them. I found a few things, but the majority of the things that I found, other than her obituary and a few NASA archival photographs, would always refer me to the NASA archives, which made me panic. But Ted Melfi is an amazing resource, because he had Margot Lee Shetterly's notes and all of the people that she'd interviewed, and we also had NASA advisors who just continuously gave anything that we asked. So that was very helpful, and basically crafting all of the information that I needed about who she was, her background information. It informed the bringing her essence to life in the movie. But yeah, there's a lot of research that had to happen in order to play Dorothy effectively.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that essence. When you were reading the script and doing this research, what were some of those qualities that jumped out to you and made you say, okay, I know how to play this character?
Well, it's because acting is it's active. So when you read that a person is pragmatic, when you read that a person is mechanically inclined, that's something that you can't effectively play, but it goes into forming the overall blueprint of who they were. When a person is practical, and then you find pictures of her, and you see that she didn't wear a lot of makeup. So you see Taraji and Janelle, their characters did wear a lot of makeup, more so than mine. But that's because of Dorothy and who she was. She was a very quiet type of woman, and in the sense that my just more subdued, I would say, than me. And sorry, somebody's walking out. But yeah, so all of that just basically informed her, who she is. She was practical, very intelligent. She found that this is something that a lot of people don't know. She found in one of her textbooks, because she was also a teacher and a math teacher, and she found that a problem was wrong in the math book, and she wrote and continued to write the publisher until it was changed. She's that type of person. She is had this tenacity that and you can't effectively play that. You just have to show it in different types of situations within the scenes.
Right. She is quiet. She's also dignified as well. There's this antagonistic relationship between you and Kirsten Dunst's character. I guess she plays your supervisor. And there's a quiet dignity to the way that you carry yourself in this relationship with her. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, she had to. Being a contemporary woman, I have a sense of agency that she didn't have, for fear of reprisal. It was the 1960s, and it was a tumultuous time in our nation's history. And she's African American. She didn't have the right to vote. She's a woman. There's only so much that she could do or say. The reason why there's a difference between how she handles situation with Kirsten Dunst versus Janelle Mary Jackson. Janelle's character is a good 15 years younger. And with youth, you have that audacity that a person like Dorothy would never show, because she understands the reprisal. She's lived through it. She's seen certain things, and so she understands what her actions mean. So that's why there's a very different way that Dorothy reacts to authority, that Catherine, and how Catherine reacts to authority, and how Mary reacts to authority. Mary seems very contemporary because, again, it's the youth that propelled the civil rights movement to its success. So, and thank God for that.
Absolutely. One of the great qualities of the movie is that, as you mentioned, all three of these women are fully formed and multifaceted. Talk a little bit about the relationship between you and Taraji and Janelle.
Well, it's what you see on screen is real. I mean, we are in constant contact with each other, and that support is what you see on screen is off screen as well. Taraji is amazing. She likes to entertain. She's more social, and she would have Janelle and I over, and we were able to let our hair down and get to know each other and really assume the roles that we're playing in the film. And through that, real friendships were forged. And I think that's why people are really gravitating towards our relationship on screen, because we genuinely care about each other off screen.
Yeah, and it certainly comes across on screen. What did Ted Melfi give you as a director, give all three of you, that helped informing that relationship and translating it to screen?
The most important thing is rehearsal time. Most films don't you don't have rehearsal time. We had a week and a half of rehearsal, and spending a few hours a day with someone was wonderful, because we were actually able not only to look at the script and discover things organically, and Ted was a wonderful collaborator in that regard as well, but just giving us the space to be able to create these characters and to work freely without judgment and to find things, made it, cemented our relationships and cemented how those relationships would be played out in front of the camera.
Well, one bit of direction I've heard that he gave the three of you was to always hold your head up high.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I get a little emotional about that, because he just said there were no victims. These aren't victims. And so at all costs, you hold your head up high. And especially when we're walking, when all of the women are walking through well, I don't know, I don't want to ruin it for people, but there's a moment when the girls have a Norma Ray moment. And it was all about presenting these women in the dignity that they lived within, how they lived, and just how they interacted with each other. And I get a little emotional thinking about that, but that was one direction that we would always come in before we did a scene. Remember, hold your head up high.
Well, it is certainly powerful to see in the film these moments of little bits of institutional racism. Is it difficult as an actress to put yourself into that space?
It's very difficult. I'm going to tell you something that most people don't know. I hate doing period movies. I hate it because those good old days that people keep referring to, they weren't really kind to people who look like me. And to basically strip yourself of your identity, of the agency that we as contemporary women possess, and to be seen in a way that really doesn't recognize our humanity, it's demeaning. And in order for me to be effective in that time period, I have to immerse myself in the time period because it precedes me. And so I watched, Eyes on the Prize is one of the greatest documents that encapsulates what was going on in our nation at that time. And it really is one that makes you feel a certain way. And in order for me to get to where I need to go, I watch hours of that. And it's just not a great place to be. It's not one that is fun to be in. And it's not a mindset that I enjoy being in. So yeah, when people say, oh, it's great, doing movies, it's period movies, not for me. And I'm going to be very honest, but it's important to do them. It's important to play people like Dorothy Vaughan so people don't forget the importance of where we are and being vocal at this stage of where we are today. But no, it's not fun being in that time period.
Absolutely. I remember seeing the film for the first time, and I see dozens of films and Q&As every year, and most of them I forget about. But I remember at the Q&A after this film, all of you were up there on stage, and there was a young African-American woman who talked about how powerful the film was to her. Just being able to see a representation of a Black woman on screen that she had never seen before, someone who was a mathematician and an engineer, and how it inspired her to know that she could do anything she wanted to. I get choked up just thinking about it myself. When people say things like that to you, I mean, how does that make you? What do you think when you hear things like that?
Well, that's the mantle that we must take on with this film, because Dorothy and Catherine and Mary represent something that we know exists. As an African-American woman, there are millions of professional Black women in our society, in our world. But it's not something that we actually get to see played out on film. And for some kids, it's important for them to see those types of people so that they can dream that dream for themselves. And to hear that young woman, I do remember that moment, and she got choked up when she said it. And that's one of the reasons, you know, when I see the film, that I get choked up, because it represents you know, a very underrepresented group of people, unheralded group of people, and disenfranchised in some regards group of people. So I understand that, and that's why I'm also, you know, on cloud nine, because it's reaching people in a way that art should reach people, and that makes me very happy.
Absolutely. Hopefully it inspires more people to tell stories about the wonderfully diverse world that we live in. Lastly, I wanted to ask you, you know, this film has gotten a lot of awards buzz, as things do. You've recently been nominated for a Golden Globe and a SAG Award, and you're no stranger to the award circuit because you're an Oscar winner for The Help. Take us back to that night, because leading up to it, you'd won every major award that you're supposed to win. Did you know that you had it in the bag, or were you still a little nervous about your chances?
No, that's, you know, every win was a surprise, because, you know, that was a year where you had Melissa McCarthy, a good friend of mine, Jessica Chastain, a good friend of mine, McTeer,
Janet McTeer.
Janet McTeer, and Berenice Bejo, or Bejo, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. So
Right.
all brilliant performances, and it's just not something that you take for granted. I was happy just to be at the party, just to be invited, just to have my name counted among those women. So Oscar night was no different. It's all very much like watching things in slow motion. Whenever I remember it, it all played out very slowly. And when I watch it, you know, the video, it's not slow at all, but my recollection of it is like watching a slow motion movie. I just remember I felt like Christian Bale took forever to say the name, but it was only like seconds, and that's how distorted time was for me.
How did it change your life in terms of the kinds of roles that you'd been offered after that? Did it affect it at all? I mean, you'd been working for such a long time up to that point.
Well, it hasn't changed my life. My life is still the same. I still have the same friends. I still do the same things, not as much as I'd like to. My career, it changed exponentially. I am a more active producer and seeking projects and in terms of what I'm going to play. And so it definitely afforded me opportunities career-wise that I don't think would have ever happened for me. But my life is still very, very simple. I'm a simple Alabama girl, and I like it that way.
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of like a little Help reunion at the Oscars this year with you, and I'm sure you've heard that before. You and Viola.
We're not at the Oscars, the Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes, that's right. I'm jumping ahead, you know.
I live in the moment. The moment is the Globes. It'll be great. It'll be great to see Viola and Jessica and Emma. I'm so proud of all of them, and Bryce will be it'll be, you know, it's wonderful. That's a group of very talented women. When I look back at the talent that Tate was able to assemble in that movie, I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of what we were able to do with that movie, and I love all of those ladies. So it was great.
We've got another great movie with this one, and I hope you feel proud, because I know that a lot of people are very moved by it, myself included.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Octavia, thank you very much.
You have a great day, and it's good to see you, honey.
Good to see you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.